Maxine had been shot, and her eyes had been out. California was in a state of panic. Everyone knew they could be next on his list. By May 1986, the media would dub this mysterious killer the Night Stalker. Some cases follow an unfortunate victim and their terrible killer. Some even show the killer in unfortunate circumstances. But in this case, this man has done so many crimes against so many people, nothing can place him above pure evil. Between June 1984 and August 1985, Richard Ramirez robbed, violated, and killed everyone in his path, earning himself the Night Stalker nickname and terrifying the whole of California. His crimes were so vile and so gruesome, he got 15 death sentences. Growing up in the 1960s in sunny Texas sounds like a dream, right? Well, for Ricardo or Richard Ramirez, it wasn't. But his pain wasn't too easy to see.
He was an ordinary kid, no different than the rest of us.
He was friendly and he was nice and he was so funny. He was so funny. He would always have me laughing.
Richard was the youngest of 5 children born to Julian and Mercedes, Mexican immigrants. They'd moved to El Paso, a town of 500,000 people with predominantly Hispanic population. Richard's house was always welcome to kids from the neighborhood who wanted to play.
Everybody used to just hang around together at night. We would all play games. All the neighborhood kids would get together up until everybody's parents started calling them in for dinner.
Mercedes was a soft, loving mother, but it was different with Julian. He was a former Mexico policeman, now working on the Santa Fe Railway.
It's a hard scrabble when you're a first-generation immigrant to learn a new language and try to scrape a toehold in a new country.
He was also a raging alcoholic, and this often meant he would physically his wife and children. When he was 10, Richard was already smoking and drinking alcohol, and with this behavior came an illness that kids around him would notice.
He would have seizures. He would be shaking. We knew he was sick.
Richard was now epileptic and in constant fear of his father. When he was 12, he started to take a liking to his cousin, Mike. He felt protected by him. But Mike was a serial killer and a racist. He was constantly boasting about the atrocities he'd committed in the Vietnam War and would show Richard Polaroid pictures of women he'd violated, killed, dismembered, and
And he pulled out this box and showed all of these photographs of the women he was, or the heads he was cutting off.
These are pictures Richard saw growing up, but he wasn't repulsed by them. He was fascinated.
It was like, wow, look what you've done.
Richard Ramirez developed into a young adult, and his only model was a serial killer and violator.
These individuals are in their fantasy lives from early adolescence, and in some regards, some respects, their fantasy life is more real to them than reality. Their fantasy lives are filled with sadistic aggression, where there's a fusion of sin and aggression.
It's never good to live inside your head, but in some cases, it can turn truly deadly. Then, Mike started showing Richard his brutality firsthand. In May 1973, Richard witnessed as Mike shot his wife in the face after a domestic argument.
And it stuck with him, not in the sense of it was a bad thing, not in the sense that, how could you do something so horrendous? I mean, oh my God, being sick to your stomach. He was fascinated.
Mike was found innocent on grounds of insanity, PTSD from the Vietnam War. He was sent to a state hospital, and Richard remained behind, fantasizing about becoming more like Mike. Around the same time, Richard moved in with his sister, Ruth. Her husband, Roberto, was an abusive peeping Tom and would take Richard on night walks to spy on their neighbors. Richard became quiet, aloof, and started doing hard illegal substances with local high school gangs. Soon enough, he joined a Satanist cult. He dropped out of high school and started sleeping in cemeteries and stealing for a living. In 1982, he tried to violate a guest in an El Paso hotel. Determined to dodge the police, Richard fled to California, but this was only the beginning of the horrors. On April 10, 1984, 9-year-old Mei Luang was looking for a lost dollar bill with her 8-year-old brother. Richard Ramirez saw this and told Mei to follow him into his basement to find the bill. There, he beat, violated, and her. He then her with a switchblade and hung her from a pipe by her blouse. This gruesome crime would not be linked to Ramirez until 2009, 25 years later.
Sunday evening, 10:40 at night. Call comes in, very typical. Okay, Gil, you got one dead, one wounded, and I'm just going to work another routine, mundane murder.
But on March 17, 1985, LA police were starting to paint a horrifying picture. But there was nothing routine about this. Dale Okiaski had been shot in the head. Her flatmate Maria had also been shot, but survived. As the police were trying to get a description of the suspect and the context of the crime, they got another call.
It occurred about a half hour later. It was in the same general area of town, and the same gun was used.
30-year-old Veronica Yu was driving home when she was stopped by another driver and shot in the chest at close range. The police knew that they were dealing with a serial killer. However, this was just the beginning of Richard Ramirez's spree. His crimes would get more violent and more gruesome than anyone could imagine. On March 27th, the bodies of Vincent and Maxine Zazzara were discovered in their home. The same gun had been used, but the behavior was different. Vincent had been shot in his sleep, but Maxine had been shot and her eyes had been out. Ramirez had taken them as trophies.
Many serial murderers take souvenirs from people that they kill, whether it's a piece of flesh, piece of jewelry, something. It is a concrete reminder. It's something they can see, something they can hold on to, something that says, wow, you did this.
2 weeks later, Bill and Lillian Doy were found dead inside their home in Monterey Park. They were in their mid-60s, and Ramirez's victims kept getting older. Bill had been shot on the spot, but Lillian had been handcuffed, beaten, and violated. She was an invalid and had no chance of defending herself. When he was done, he let Lillian live and left the house. The detectives started to understand the criminal mind behind this.
Men he was killing because they were the obstacle to get to his lust, the women.
It was an issue of control. It was an issue of not being overpowered. What husband or man would lay there and not intervene in trying to keep his partner from being attacked?
On May 29th, two sisters in their 80s called the police. Ma Bell and Nettie Lang had been beaten with a hammer. Ma had also been violated. Ramirez left them in tears, struggling to cope with what had just happened to them. Once again, Ramirez had changed his MO.
It was a whole aspect of the occult.
There were some pentagrams, some things written on the wall. There were some markings on the body.
Because the behavior around the crimes changed so drastically from one murder to the other, the police had no idea who they were looking for.
Was it a maniac? Was it a group of people? Because don't forget, in California, they had Charles Manson, who, with his cult, went out to murdering an awful lot of individuals. But my impression was that it was a single individual.
The opinions were mixed. Some psychologists thought that there had to be a group, but the majority of people involved in the case thought it was one young man whose MO was simply getting darker and more gruesome as he wasn't getting caught. This was true. When Richard Ramirez first came to California, he stole cars and burglarized homes because many people would leave their doors unlocked.
And he would go through the unlocked doors and unlocked windows, Sometimes he would go in and burglarize when nobody was home at night, and then he got bolder and bolder and bolder.
For Ramirez, breaking and entering had horrifying overtones. He wasn't just doing it for material gain. He enjoyed looking inside someone's home. Then he enjoyed coming into a house where people were sleeping.
And since about 50% of burglaries occur in the evening when the victim is likely to be home, it's very easy to see the progression from voyeurism to break and entry to assault or to murder.
By May 1986, the media would dub this mysterious killer the Night Stalker. California was in a state of panic. Everyone knew they could be next on his list. Gun sales went up and people started locking their doors, windows, and every possible entry into their homes.
It was a very, very hot summer. I would not open the windows at night. We sweltered in our house every night because I was afraid somebody'd come in and kill me.
People weren't wrong in being afraid. Ramirez was nowhere near done. On May 30th, Carol Kyle was violated inside her home, while her 11-year-old son was gagged, handcuffed, and locked in a closet. A month later, Mary Louise Cannon was raped and killed. This time, Ramirez her throat. On July 5th, Ramirez made his way back to another quiet suburb, Sierra Madre. He entered the home of 16-year-old Whitney Bennett.
You talk about a nightmare. Her parents awakened to her crying and coming down the hall. They find her in her bedroom on the floor, covered in.
She'd been beaten with a tire iron, but she survived. These horrific attacks were taking their toll not only on California residents, but on the police detectives. On July 7th, Detective Carrillo woke up convinced the Night Stalker was in his house.
I woke up, I was sweating, I was nauseated, and I got my gun and I cleared my house as if I was looking for a burglar. All of a sudden the phone rang. I scared the bejesus out of me, and it was my desk telling me to call my friend Linda.
Linda's neighbor had been robbed and violated. The same night, another woman in her 60s had been beaten to death. 2 weeks later, he did the same, entered 2 homes and killed everyone in them within the same day. This time, he made a mother say, "Hail Satan," before violating her, then violated her 8-year-old son too. On August 17th, Ramirez shot another couple and left a satanic symbol in their home, but this time it was in San Francisco. He might have seemed impossible to catch, but just around this time, the police were getting leads. Multiple witness descriptions came hand in hand with a fingerprint the police found on a stolen car that was seen at a crime scene. They now had Richard's picture all over the states. On August 24th, Ramirez attacked 2 more homes and left the victims alive. These would be his last attacks. On August 29th, 1985, he arrived back in LA after visiting a brother in Arizona.
Ricky walked into the nearest convenience store to buy some candy, and he noticed people were looking at him.
When he got to the counter, he realized the newspapers were filled with pictures of him. A woman screamed, "It's him! El Matador," meaning killer in Spanish. Ramirez immediately ran off, and what followed was a movie-worthy police chase, with cars, helicopters, and street officers following him throughout LA. Finally, a couple of young citizens tackled him on Hubbard Street.
And tackled them right here up against this fence.
Citizens come out and surround him.
And he was right here, sitting down right here.
Richard Ramirez was finally in custody. The people of California could finally rest, and the victims of their families could try to recover from a truly horrifying year. Now the police were finally face to face with the Night Stalker.
He was much more intelligent than I envisioned. People think of him as a crazed man. I didn't think he was crazy.
Although he dropped out of school at 15, Ramirez was well-versed in serial killers. They were his lifelong passion, ever since his cousin had taken him under his wing. But Mike is not accountable for Richard's gruesome crimes.
A lot of people grow up poor, and a lot of people are abused in their childhood, but they don't all grow up to do the things that Richard Ramirez did.
In 1989, he was found guilty of 13 murders and 30 attempted murders, violates, and assaults. He was sentenced to death. While on death row, Ramirez married a groupie, Doreen Loy, who had written him almost 75 letters since his arrest in 1985. But in 2009, Ramirez's DNA was linked to the violation and death of 9-year-old May Luong, and this was too much even for Doreen, who left him. Ramirez died in 2013 because of complications from lymphoma. He was 53. This brought little comfort to his victims, especially since he never got his death penalty. What he did still haunts hundreds of people. It's a very scary thought that a child can turn into such a monster with just the right amount of things going wrong. Thanks for watching. As always, feel free to give a thumbs up to our video and subscribe to the channel for more. Till next time, and stay safe.